Why you're still unhappy even after winning everything. You have won. On paper, your life is everything someone could dream of. The job, the house, the car, the applause. People look at you and say, you've made it. But when you sit in silence, something still feels off. You're smiling in photos, but numb inside. That's not failure. That's a hidden truth most never speak about. In today's world, we're taught to chase success, but not how to find peace. This video is a journey within, to understand why, even after achieving everything, you still feel empty, and how to finally feel whole. You mistook success for fulfillment. When we were younger, success was painted like a golden trophy, something shiny and distant that once held would erase all pain, prove all worth, and silence every inner critic. We watched the world celebrate those who climbed the highest ladders, and we told ourselves, if I get there, I'll be happy. And so we chased. With every sleepless night, every skipped meal, every ignored emotion, we kept running toward the image of a life where everything would finally make sense. But when you finally got there, when you stood at the peak of your mountain, you noticed something strange. There was no music playing, no grand curtain call, no thunder of inner peace, just stillness, and perhaps a hollow echo. This is the first lie we are taught, that success and fulfillment are the same, but they are not. Success is a destination the world sees. Fulfillment is a feeling only you can sense, and they don't always arrive together. You may succeed in building a company, but fail to build connection. You may succeed in making millions, but lose the meaning behind why you even started. You may win awards and admiration, but still feel unseen. And that contradiction, you begin to question yourself. Why am I not satisfied? What more do I need? But maybe the question isn't what more, maybe it's what different. See, success is measured in numbers. Fulfillment is felt in moments. The warmth in your chest when someone understands you. The quiet joy in helping without being seen. The deep exhale when you sit alone and realize you like who you are. These aren't things you can post about. They're not trophies, but they matter more because they're yours. The reason you still feel unhappy, even after winning everything, is because the world only prepared you to chase success, not to live fulfilled, not to rest, not to savor, not to breathe between accomplishments. You were taught how to perform, not how to be. And that's why the applause doesn't land. That's why the celebration feels empty, because the audience cheered for your role, but they never met your soul. And now, standing in this silence, you realize something more powerful than any prize. That maybe, just maybe, the journey wasn't supposed to be about getting there. Maybe it was about being here, fully, present, whole, enough. You're addicted to external validation. There's a voice inside all of us that wonders, was that good enough? And without realizing it, we've handed the answer to that question to the world. We scroll through likes, comments, promotions, compliments, hoping each one tells us we matter. It starts small, a good grade, a proud smile from a parent, a cheer from a crowd. And slowly, our worth begins to drift away from our inner knowing and into the hands of others. We stop asking, do I feel proud of myself? And start asking, did they notice me? In today's world, validation is a drug. It's fast, it's accessible, and it gives us an immediate high. But just like any drug, the crash always follows. And so we chase again. Another achievement, another post, another approval. And still, no matter how many people say, you're amazing, something inside us whispers, but do they really know me? Because deep down, we're not craving validation, we're craving understanding. And validation, while loud, is often hollow. It praises our performance, not our essence. We've confused recognition with connection, applause with affection. And when the world only sees your highlight reel, it's easy to forget that there's more to you than what you do. You become your resume, your follow account, your job title, your relationship status. And while the outside gets shinier, the inside starts to rust, because no one's asking how you really are. And worse, you've stopped asking yourself too. The danger of external validation is that it shifts your entire compass. You start making decisions based on what will look good, not what will feel right. You stay in roles that drain you because they impress others. You pursue paths you don't love because they're socially admired. And you slowly start to disappear behind the mask of what people expect. But here's the truth. Validation isn't wrong. We all need to feel seen, heard, appreciated. The problem is when we need it to feel worthy. When your confidence becomes dependent on someone else's opinion, you give away your power. You give them the pen and let them write your story. And often, they don't even know your real script. The irony is, the people who truly know themselves attract the deepest respect, not because they seek it, but because they don't need it. Their energy speaks louder than their image. They walk into a room without performing. They choose silence over applause, purpose over popularity, meaning over marketing, and in that quiet confidence, they're free. So if you've won everything but still feel unhappy, ask yourself, who am I living for? And if the answer isn't your own soul, maybe it's time to come home. Not to the version of you the world loves, but the one you've hidden. The one that doesn't need to prove anything, because being is already enough. You've lost connection with your inner self. There was a time you used to sit with yourself in peace, a time when silence wasn't scary and stillness wasn't wasted. But somewhere along the way, as life became louder, as responsibilities multiplied, as screens filled every empty space, that connection to your inner self quietly faded. And the strangest part is you didn't even notice it happening. We're so used to being busy, to doing, achieving, posting, replying, that the idea of just being with ourselves now feels uncomfortable. But we check our phones in elevators. We scroll while waiting for coffee. We keep music or podcasts playing just to avoid hearing our own thoughts. Because sometimes those thoughts are hard to face. They remind us of what we've buried, emotions we haven't processed, dreams we've abandoned, questions we don't want to answer. And so we avoid them. But in doing so, we also avoid ourselves. Losing connection with your inner self doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly. You stop journaling. You stop taking walks without a destination. You stop reflecting on your choices. You begin living on autopilot, following the calendar, the to-do list, the notifications, and suddenly months or years pass and you realize you don't really know who you are anymore, beyond your roles and routines. The world may know you as the achiever, the provider, the strong one, but inside, you feel like a stranger to yourself. And that disconnect is where the unhappiness grows. Because how can you feel truly joyful, truly whole, if the person you spend the most time with, yourself, feels like a mystery? True happiness isn't found in the world's noise. It's found in the quiet corners of your own soul. But you have to visit. You have to return. And it doesn't require a grand spiritual journey or a sabbatical. Sometimes it just takes 10 minutes of sitting with your hand on your heart, breathing, and asking, how am I really? Sometimes it's writing without editing, walking without headphones, watching the sunset without trying to capture it. Your inner self has wisdom. It knows what matters. It knows what you truly want. But it speaks softly, not like the ads, the influencers, the motivational speakers. It whispers. And if your life is too loud, you'll miss it. You'll keep chasing what others say should make you happy while ignoring what your soul is gently pointing toward. Rebuilding that connection isn't easy, but it's always possible. And when you do, something beautiful happens. You start to feel grounded again. You stop feeling like a leaf in the wind and instead feel like a tree with roots. Because no matter what storms come, success, failure, praise, criticism, you are centered. You are home. You silence the voice of stillness. There's a voice inside all of us. Not loud, not dramatic, not constant. It's gentle, patient, and calm. It's the voice that speaks when everything else goes quiet. The one that surfaces when you're alone in your room, staring at the ceiling. It doesn't shout. It doesn't beg. It just waits for you to slow down enough to hear it. But in the rush of your life, that voice has been drowned out, not because it stopped speaking, but because you stopped listening. We live in a culture that celebrates noise, constant movement, endless updates, breaking news, new goals, next achievements. We're taught that being still is lazy, that rest is weakness, that silence is a void that needs to be filled. So we fill it with distractions, devices, dopamine. But in doing so, we silence the only voice that truly knows what we need. You might have everything you ever wanted, the job, the title, the love, the life. But if you can't sit with yourself in stillness, there will always be a gap between what you have and what you feel. Because stillness isn't emptiness, it's presence. It's the only space where you can actually hear your soul. And the longer you avoid it, the louder your anxiety becomes. Your mind races, your chest tightens, your peace dissolves. Not because of what's happening outside you, but because you've lost touch with what's inside. Stillness is where you meet the part of you that's not performing, not proving. It's where you remember that your value doesn't lie in what you do, but in who you are, without the filters, without the applause. But most people never reach that place because they fear what stillness might reveal. The old wounds, the unprocessed emotions, the truths they've been running from. But what if stillness wasn't a threat, but a teacher? When you allow yourself to be still, even for a few moments each day, you begin to notice what truly matters. The way your body feels, the pace of your breath, the tension in your thoughts. And slowly, without judgment, you start to reconnect with the parts of you that have been neglected. That child inside who just wanted to be loved. That dream you buried beneath responsibility. That fear you never spoke aloud. In stillness, you don't need to fix everything. You just need to face it. And that honesty alone is healing. Success will never feel like enough if you're constantly running from yourself, because you can achieve all you want, but you'll never outrun your inner voice. It will wait for you beneath the noise, beneath the grind, like a lighthouse in the fog, quietly shining until you're ready to come home. Don't wait for burnout to force you into silence. Choose it. Create space for it. Build it into your life like a sacred ritual. Whether it's a few mindful breaths in the morning, a walk without your phone, or simply sitting with your thoughts before bed. Give your stillness the same respect you give your goals. Because in the silence you'll hear not just your voice, but the truth you've been searching for. You forgot the purpose behind the pursuit. At the beginning of any journey, there is a spark, a reason that makes your chest rise and your eyes light up. That first why behind every decision. Maybe it was to provide for your family, to create freedom, to make a difference, to prove to yourself that you could. But somewhere along the way, as the pressure increased and the pace quickened, that purpose began to fade, replaced by metrics, targets, deadlines, external goals. And now, even though you've achieved so much, it feels like you've lost something more valuable than any reward, your reason for starting. This is the silent crisis behind many successful people. On the outside, they look focused, driven, unstoppable. But on the inside, they feel disconnected, not just from others, but from their own story. Because when you lose your why, your how becomes exhausting. You wake up, work hard, chase success, but it all feels mechanical, empty, like going through the motions of a life that no longer feels like yours. Purpose isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the fuel that gives meaning to struggle, direction to decisions, and heart to hard work. Without it, even your biggest accomplishments can feel meaningless. You climb the ladder only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. And that realization that maybe you've been chasing something that no longer aligns with who you are is what leads to the emptiness so many feel in silence. But here's the truth most people forget. You're allowed to redefine your purpose. You're not bound to the goals you set years ago. Growth means change, and change means reevaluation. What lit you up 5 years ago may not light you up today. And that you're not failing, you're evolving. And part of evolution is reconnecting with what truly matters to you now. Not to your parents, not to your past self, not to your followers, to you. Ask yourself, why did I begin? What mattered to me before the noise? Who was I trying to become? And does that version still align with who I am today? These aren't easy questions, but they're essential. Because your purpose isn't found in numbers, it's found in alignment. In knowing that the energy you give each day is feeding a life that reflects your values, not just your ambitions. Reconnecting with purpose doesn't require a radical change. Sometimes it's just a shift in focus. Bringing meaning back into your work, serving people in a deeper way, choosing integrity over image, slowing down enough to ask, is this still true for me? And if the answer is no, have the courage to adjust, not out of failure, but out of wisdom. You don't have to abandon success. You just have to realign it with your soul. Because when purpose leads, fulfillment follows. And the emptiness fades, not because you've added more to your life, but because you've remembered what it was all for. You never redefined what enough means. At some point in your journey, you decided what enough looked like. Maybe it was a certain income, a job title, a house in a specific neighborhood, or recognition from a particular person. And so you worked, you hustled, you sacrificed, and eventually you got there, or even beyond. But oddly, you didn't feel full. You didn't feel done. The bar had moved. The goalpost had shifted. And now enough wasn't enough anymore. That's the hidden trap. When we never pause to redefine what enough means, we end up living in a constant state of insufficiency, even when we're overflowing. It becomes a chase with no finish line. You thought you'd feel complete when you reached 6 figures, then 7. You thought you'd be fulfilled when you got promoted, then you needed the next one. You imagined love would feel secure, then you needed proof, and so it goes, on and on. The reason why this happens isn't because you're ungrateful or greedy, it's because the world you live in is designed to keep you discontent. Ads, algorithms, even self-help sometimes, they all whisper, you could be doing more, having more. And slowly, subtly, you internalize the belief that you are not enough unless you keep producing, achieving, outperforming. But what if enough isn't a place you reach, but a feeling you allow? What if it's not about the size of your house, but the warmth within it? Not about how many people follow you, but how deeply you're connected to those who truly know you. Not about checking off boxes, but checking in with your soul. Redefining enough requires courage. It means stepping off the treadmill of comparison and asking, what does a meaningful life look like for me? Not in society's eyes, but in my own heart. Maybe it's not the biggest bank account, but financial peace. Maybe it's not being known by everyone, but being fully seen by a few. Maybe it's not constant progress, but daily presence. When you don't redefine enough, you stay stuck in a loop of scarcity, always looking ahead, never landing here. You achieve, but you don't appreciate. You collect, but you don't connect. You win, but you don't rest. And that constant striving is what turns success into stress. It's why you can have everything and still feel nothing. But once you start practicing contentment, not as complacency, but as clarity, everything shifts. You begin to savor what you have. You see beauty in simplicity. You honor your limits. You become more intentional, more grateful, more grounded. And ironically, that's when you attract more. Not because you're chasing it, but because you're aligned with it. There's no universal definition of enough. It's deeply personal, and it evolves as you do. So revisit it often, redefine it boldly, protect it fiercely, because when you know what enough feels like, and you choose to honor that, you step out of the race and into peace. So here you are, successful, accomplished, admired, yet quietly aching with a question you don't say out loud. Why don't I feel happy? And now you know. It was never just about the money or the milestones or the medals. It was about meaning, about alignment, about coming back to yourself after losing yourself in the chase. And maybe that's the new success. Not what you have, but how deeply you feel. Not how far you go, but how connected you remain. Maybe true happiness isn't at the end of achievement, but in the moments when you realize you're already whole. I end up by saying that you don't find your worth in the world's eyes. You find it by looking within and finally seeing yourself clearly. If this spoke to you, if it made you pause and reflect, then let's keep growing together. Subscribe to my channel, The Inner World, for more deep, soul-centered videos like this. Let's make space not just for success, but for stillness. Not just for progress, but for peace. See you in the next video.